Last year, I made a video saying that a lot of countries, if not all countries, are going to be faced with making a decision between three things. One is growth rate. Two is where your interest rates. And three, where is your currency? And we're seeing that play out even here in the US. We're doing the same thing. We just cut our rates when there's no reason to cut the rates. And look what happened to our interest rates. They went up. They didn't go down, all right? So, but we're not the only country that's facing this. We've already looked at the French. We looked at UK. We looked at what's going on in Turkey, what's going on in Argentina, which, by the way, the U.S. today gave an unconditional bailout. They asked for $30 billion, and we gave it to him unconditional because he's a right-winger like Trump. That's it, okay? They have gone, this is the 10th bankruptcy in 23 years, and we're bailing them out. I don't get it, but they're not the only one. Yesterday, Indonesia fired the head of their central bank, and they lowered their interest rates when everyone, and I mean everyone, thought they were not going to do that. And the article starts out and points out it's very linear what's happening with the Federal Reserve in Washington and what's happening in Jakarta. And they were shocked and surprised by the interest rate cut. So the president has set his sights on an 8% growth rate by 2029, a rate that's not been seen since before the Asian flu, which was the 1997-1998 Asian crisis, okay? And the head of the central bank has long been a guardrail on fiscal policy overreach, right? So, and immediately they wasted no time. They pumped another $12 billion into the economy to spur lending. Now, I'm only pointing this out because I believe we're all going to be hearing this word, okay? And we're hearing it from Besant in different ways, this burden sharing. So what does Besant say? He says, we've been taking care of Wall Street for the last 50 years. Now we're going to take care of Main Street. So we're not going to give them the interest on their money that they normally get because we want to cut it for Main Street, okay? And they're basically saying they call it burden sharing, all right? This is basically, I don't know. We'll find out as time goes on. I think it's all BS, okay? And the last paragraph sums it up. The experience from other EMs shows that an erosion of central bank independence leads to higher inflation and inflation expectations. A prolonged period of high interest rates would eventually be needed to get inflation back down. And the article then just pivots right to America. This gambit comes as Trump is endeavoring to neuter the Fed's independence, and Moran, in his first meeting, was the only dissenting vote, wanted a 0.5% cut in interest rates instead of just 25%. Now, the president of Indonesia is being, semi-careful. He says, look, this is an all-out pro-growth policy, but we want to maintain stability, and we will be prudent and measured, okay? But the president immediately grabbed half of the bank's reserve, central bank reserve, and handed it out to the banks, $12 billion. Just first minute, here, we're taking this and we're moving there. But something else interesting is happening also, all right? And last week, the central banks of Indonesia and China launched a local currency settlement framework for bilateral transaction. The plan is to increase the use of local currencies in bilateral trade and investment. Previously, bilateral payments were linked between the People's Bank of China and the BI were limited to current account transactions and direct investment. In other words, it wasn't really transaction. But this could signal the beginning of a pivot by Southeast Asian economies to peg their currencies to the yuan instead of the dollar, and that is important. And they say here that, look, he is going to start fueling debt concerns because he is now going to push public expenditures to get the economy up to the 8% growth rate, which could heighten risk of financial instability. And anyone's been following the news in the last week, Malaysia, they're burning down the country. They have basically the same thing going on there. And then look at Japan. Ishiba had to resign, and they still haven't come up with how they're going to handle their financial situation. So the last two paragraphs here kind of like sum everything up. One, people don't think they're going to maintain their 3% fiscal deficit cap, and it's going to, and if the government thinks it's going to miss its growth targets. And the bigger problem is by prioritizing control over creating more productive economy, they are dragging the Southeast's biggest economy back to the days of living dangerously. The biggest takeaway for us is that we are not alone. We see what's going on in Europe. Now, this is going on in Southeast Asia. And all these countries, what do you do? What do the Japanese do? Do they raise their interest rates to protect the yen? Because if the yen goes down, it's going to cause inflation. And if the inflation comes, then their bonds are going to go down, their interest rates are going to go up. That scenario exists for the French, for the UK, for Spain, for Italy, for Greece, now Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, Korea. All these countries have exactly the same issue. So the video that I did about a year ago on all the governments with the social contracts and so forth around the world was that these three things were going to come into play: interest rates, currency, growth rate. And it's my contention, I don't know, tell me in the comments what you think. I think that they'll debase their currencies to drive the economy up, because you can't drive your economy without investing into it. Investing means you have to have more debt, okay? Remember what Ishiba said in Japan about 3 or 4 months ago: we're not going to have an economic package because we have to borrow all the money for the economic package. It makes no sense, all right? Well, think about it. This is what's going on around the world. It actually doesn't make economic sense. But I ask you, you're the president, you're a prime minister, you're a dictator. It doesn't matter, okay? What choices would you make being faced where everyone has the exact same issue? What are you going to do? You're going to raise your interest rates and take down your economy with the tariffs on top of them, which again will cause all kinds of issues with your fiscal deficit anyhow. So it's like más or menos, right? I mean, this issue is not going to go away. My point is that we are going to have to make our investment decisions in an environment where these three factors are being decided virtually across the globe. And so my question to you is what would you do? I know what I would do. So tell me in the comments, like and follow, and thank you for listening.